A Manitoba man wanted in connection with the disappearance and presumed death of his neighbour has been captured in southern Ontario. He's been the subject of a week-long manhunt, and the CBC's Karen Pauls has the story live from Winnipeg. Karen, what's the latest?
Well, you know, Carol, this manhunt ended after the OPP got tips from 3 different people in the Belleville, Ontario area. They reported seeing a vehicle with the license plates of the car that the police had sent out pictures of throughout social media to Manitobans, to Ontarians, letting people know that Eric Wildman might be headed their direction and to keep an eye out for this. And his vehicle was spotted, his rental vehicle was spotted at a house in a sort of posh neighborhood near Belleville. The police, the RCMP, and the OPP worked through the night to get search warrants, and here's what happened when they arrived on site. Take a listen.
Officers attempted to enter a residence in Prince Edward County, just outside of Belleville, Ontario. Upon entering, they were met with gunfire coming from within the residence. The officers moved into a position of containment around the residence, and our OPP crisis negotiators were able to make contact with the 2 occupants inside the house. After lengthy negotiations, the OPP crisis negotiators were able to successfully have these 2 men surrender to police. One of those persons that surrendered is Eric Wildman, who is currently wanted by the RCMP out of Manitoba. The other person is currently being questioned, and I'll have more information to share as the investigation is ongoing. Very grateful that there were no injuries in this situation, as it could have been a very violent encounter.
And you know, Carol, RCMP officers here in Winnipeg told us this morning they were holding their breath, watching to see what would happen as that standoff was taking place, hoping also for no violence. The second suspect has been questioned. He's been released. Eric Wildman will be flown back to Winnipeg to face charges involving possession and transportation of firearms and some police paraphernalia found in his abandoned vehicle, including the red and blue lights that you can see on top of police vehicles. That's all taking place when he arrives, but police say he will also face charges in connection with the disappearance and alleged death of his neighbor, Curtis Joseph. He's a Métis fisherman who lived right next to him. His truck and some of his belongings were found on Wildman's property. So that will all be taking place. Police continue to search for Joseph's remains. They will look throughout the weekend at Wildman's property and other properties as they try to find some solution and some closure for Curtis Joseph's family.
Karen, there were questions also about how the RCMP proceeded with this investigation.
Right, I mean, they were keeping the public up to date on social media, on Twitter, sending out photos and tips and warning people that if they saw Eric Wildman to call them, not to approach him. He was presumed dangerous and armed. But there have been some questions and criticism about them not sending out an emergency alert. Here's the response to some of those questions this morning from the RCMP.
At no time during this investigation did we have the requisite knowledge of the specific risk that Mr. Wildman posed, a location where that risk might manifest itself, or a specific target of that risk. Without this, we would simply be raising fear without any possibility of mitigating that risk. I can say that there were at least 3 occasions this week where senior leaders were prepared to activate the Alert Ready system. But the tips associated to each of those situations turned out to be unrelated to our investigation.
Now, Carol, you recall, of course, that was also a criticism of the RCMP a year ago in Nova Scotia when those 22 people were killed by someone impersonating a police officer. So it's a big question here. Now, police had been scouring cottage country in Manitoba. Residents there are relieved to hear that the manhunt is over and they will be able to have a weekend with no fear. They don't have to lock their doors anymore and they'll be able to enjoy the weekend. Carol?
Karen, thank you. The CBC's Karen Pauls in Winnipeg.